The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon pan man, I'm the Teflon pan man, ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Hey everyone, and welcome to All You Can Eat, the podcast about deliciousness. Very happy to have you all here today. It's the 20th day of March, otherwise known as the first day of spring, which in and of itself makes me particularly happy. But welcome back to all those of you, all those of you who are here as return. Welcome to anybody who's coming in new. Special shout out to my friends up in the Boston area. Glad to have you here. Let's get delicious. And by the way, we're coming in live, and I always prefer going live, so we try to do it for every possible podcast. However, for those of you I'm saying hello to the folks that are here live. By tomorrow at this time, we'll be up on the iHeart Radio and some of the other Spreaker and SoundCloud, some of the other platforms. So if you don't happen to be listening live, don't think that it's any less welcoming for you. Glad to have you all here. Now, tonight, we've got a lot going on, a lot to cover, including the fact that we have a guest I'm very excited to speak with. Her name is Doreen Dodgen-Magee. She is a psychologist, and here's what I want to tell you about Doreen. This is why you're going to want to stand by. A psychologist with over 25 years of experience working with individuals and groups. She's based in Portland, where we're going to speak to her from. And in addition to a whole lot of other things that she does as a speaker around the world, she is an expert in the area of how the digital landscape is shaping humanity. What I'm saying is that she works for at least 2 decades in understanding the impact of technology on human behavior. And this is what it is that we're going to talk about with Doreen. She's also the author, by the way, of a book, just so that you know in advance, Deviced, Balancing Life and Technology in the Digital World. Very excited to speak with her, so hang on for that. Before we do, though, a couple of announcements. First of all, what was I going to say? Announcement number 1. Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, if you happen to be in the neighborhood of New York, next Monday night, what night is that going to be? Well, today's 2027 minus 2. Monday night, the 25th, I'm happen to be teaching a class, so if you happen to be in and around the New York City, I'm going to do a Meatless Monday class. We're going to be making things like risotto and pink peppercorn biscuits, buffalo cauliflower. We're going to do some shakshuka, and which sounds exotic, but it's essentially eggs that we poach in a tomato sauce, which will make maybe some potato leek soup, and affogato, one of my favorite desserts. So you can sign up for that if you want by finding me. And the way you can do that is probably just look up Short Order Dad, and then you can contact me, Twitter, Instagram, whatever else, or even Gmail. Hey, another announcement is that this is episode number 49. Next week, episode 50, I also have a guest, someone you may know, if you ever watch the show Top Chef, which is in its, 800th season. Probably the most successful food television franchise in history. I can't think of anything that's more successful. And anyway, my guest next week is one of the judges, Gail Simmons, so you want to tune in for that. Now, we're going to start tonight with a review of some of the things that I have been receiving, by which I mean that people send me things. They send me products and to taste, to sample, and then to report on. And in the interest of full disclosure, which is my philosophy, my interest, and all I really care about, when they send me things, they're not sending me with any kind of payment. So whatever I give you is completely my opinion, without any pressure whatsoever. In fact, anybody that wants to send me something knows, I suppose, on some level that they run the risk that I might not particularly like it. Anyway, that said, let me report on three things as your recommendation engine, and that's why they're sending me, because, if I like it, I will recommend it. And the first thing starts off with technology, which I really wanted. It's one of the themes for tonight, because we're going to talk a lot with Doreen, obviously, about technology. When you think about technology, here are the buzzwords that I keep hearing in the world. There's a lot of people talking about the development of artificial intelligence. And I'll tell you, I don't know a lot about it, but I know this. Since there's such an overall dearth of intelligence, I'm happy to have some artificial stuff coming along. So I'm good with that. Now, there's also, I'm hearing a lot about augmented reality, another concept that I don't profess to know much about. All I know is that I'm not really sure about reality and why it would be augmented, but that's happening. And here's another thing that's happening. Technology is making its way into your kitchen, into your restaurants, and into your meal making. Right? Now, what are some of the most obvious examples that, you want to make a reservation to go out to eat, right? You do that basically used to be, you would have to call somebody and say, I'd like a party for 4 at 8 o'clock on Saturday, and then actually speak to a human. Those days are very numbered. You can make a reservation now at restaurants all around the world simply by pressing some buttons on a site, whether it's Resi or Open Table or whatever it is. Well, one of the things that I get an email that says, would you try sushi from a robot? And I'm intrigued by that. So my answer was, yes, send me some sushi by a robot. And so today for lunch, I had sushi. Let me just see exactly what it was that I was eating here. Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. I had sushi from a robot. And the name of the company that makes robots is called Autec, A-U-T-E-C, the nation's leading commercial robotic sushi machine provider. Now, the thing that was fascinating to me, before we even get to the actual sushi, was Autec used to be a different company, a company called Audio-Technica, right? Audio-Technica, for those who are old enough to remember, was a company that made needles for turntables. Now, let me date myself here and explain what's going on. Long before there was streaming, long before there was iTunes, before there were CDs, there were these things called records on which music was pressed. It was vinyl, and to play it, you used a turntable or a phonograph, and the needle that played along the grooves of the vinyl was made oftentimes by a company called Audio-Technica. But they did what we in business like to call the pivot. Once they saw that the music world was changing, that the technology was changing, that people were not buying giant sleeves of vinyl, they got into the business of making sushi machines. So literally, there's a company called Autec, A-U-T-E-C, that's no longer, I don't know, maybe they're still making some phonograph needles, I don't even know, but they're certainly making machines. So I said, yes, send me some stuff. So the thing about the company is that they are making these, I don't know how, here's the thing, I don't know how I feel about having my sushi made by a robot, to be perfectly blunt about it. I am a purist. So I mean, and a sushi master has spent probably well over 7 years just getting to the level where they can stand in front of you and make sushi. And so maybe, in addition to being a purist, maybe I'm even elitist. There's something, I mean, I would actually like my sushi made by a sushi professional master. However, that said, the concept here is a little bit different. They're offering up machines to not only restaurants, but places that serve giant quantities of food. Like if you're throwing an affair for 4,000 people, believe me, you want a sushi machine if you want to serve sushi. Well, they sent me 4 rolls today, and the rolls came up from a place, a restaurant in New York that's recently opened called Rollin, R-O-L-L-N, like Rollin Sushi. And their concept is basically that it's, I assume, I didn't go to the actual place, they sent it up, but it's the kind of place that you go to primarily for takeout. I don't even know if they have seats over there at the Rollin, but they sent me 4 rolls, because that's what this machine does. It rolls. And I'll tell you, on site, on inspection, on looking at them, they look like, they look almost like the rolls that you would have in a restaurant, except that oftentimes when your sushi is made in a roll, like a hand roll in a restaurant, it comes in a cone shape, right? Whereas these rolls are entirely perfectly cylindrical. That said, they sent me one with salmon avocado. Lovely. They sent me one with spicy tuna. Good. Shrimp avocado was my favorite. And then they sent one. And again, this is from Roland, which is looking ultimately to have franchises, and they probably will, around the country, around the world, because it's an Australian concept now being introduced in New York. You'll see it soon. They sent me one that is their cheeseburger roll. No kidding. There was meat and cheese and rice inside a nori wrapped roll, and so that one, is served warm. I will tell you this about it. There's nothing wrong with a good hamburger and cheese and rice, even when you wrap it in the nori roll. It's innovative. It's different. It actually tasted fine. It's whether or not a sushi is talking to a purist, we know the answer to that. Anyway, had that, and I thought the whole concept is really interesting. So I'm not going to get into the ethics of it. I don't want to really even discuss, although I certainly might with Doreen, what it means that more of our food is being prepared by robots, honestly. But I thought it was interesting. And so, if you see a place, and there's only one right now, at least in New York, called Roland, you'll know that they're rolling up good quality, good tasting sushi. I had no problem with the product, man. Fresh, well made, obviously well constructed. So Roland was good. And if you're someone in the kind of restaurant, hospitality, hotel, whatever business that you're in, and you want to produce 100, what do they do, like 1,300, some crazy number of rolls that they can do at the same time. Outec, AUTEC, is the company that you want to look up. Very interesting and good, and so thank you for that, Outec. Next, I am wearing a shirt right now that is black, and it is a crew neck, and it is short sleeve. It was sent to me by a company called Unbound Merino. You might have heard of merino, Merinoy, because merino is a type of wool. So the shirt that I'm wearing, sent to me by Unbound Merino, and it's meant for people like myself who travel with frequency, regularity. Founded by 3 best friends, it was built on the premise of hassle-free and luggage-free travel, and I totally get it. I don't remember the last time I checked a bag on an airline. All right, mine goes in the overhead, period, end of story. The only time I make the exception is if I'm traveling with just, too much stuff. It's not going to fit. You're going on a trip where you're going to go skiing or whatever it is you do. I'll check the baggage, but I am not a checker. So I can understand why something that this, like this works, right? Durable, lightweight merino wool, which is cool, right? Because it's a little bit stretchy on me, right? And the thing that's kind of cool about it is that it's, if it's cold, it kind of keeps you warm. And if you're warm, it kind of, it wicks, it kind of keeps you down. Like that's that's how merino wool typically works. What they're selling here is that if you're going to travel a whole bunch, you want to minimize what's going in the luggage. You pick up one of their merino shirts, $65 it's going to run you, okay? And here's the claim. It doesn't smell. You can travel for weeks without ever having to wash a single Unbound Merino t-shirt. One of the founders even wore one throughout his entire honeymoon. So, okay, there's that, right? Number 2, it regulates temperature. So merino wool is simultaneously breathable and insulating. I agree. It dries fast. So, when you do decide to dry it, wash it, rinse it, whatever you want to do, you know that it's going to dry pretty quickly. And they say it also doesn't wrinkle, so you can kind of stick it into your backpack or however you're traveling and take it whenever it is that you're going to go. Now, I used it on my trip last week to Mexico. I wore it coming back. I'm more inclined to kind of wash it periodically, but I will say this: I have no problem recommending it. I have no problem at all. I like it. It's comfortable. It serves the purpose if you're the kind of person that wants to wear something under something else and not have to bring 3 or 4 different versions. I'm saying go with it. Check out the reviews yourself online. It is Unbound Merino. Unbound Merino. You can find it. I'm sure that it's Unbound Merino, or maybe it's just unbound.com. Sorry. But you can easily find it. T-shirts, tank tops, long sleeve shirts, hoodies, whatever it is that you want. Save time and travel more simplistically or minimally. So there's that. And then finally, my friends, one last thing to report on this week before we get on and talk about technology's kind of unbelievable impact on our lives. I'm shocked myself, by the way. I got some, right here, I am looking at a product called hemp tincture from a company called Extract Labs. Long story short, one of the other trends that you cannot help but notice, and we've talked about it multiple times on the show, is the increasing popularity and usage of both cannabis and hemp, CBD, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about it before. It's huge. It's growing. This particular product here is a tincture. It comes in a little bottle. It comes with a medicine dropper. What I'm looking at here is raspberry flavored 1,000 milligrams of CBD raspberry flavored drops. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to have some now, and I'll explain why. I'm going to go with 50. Hang on. I'm just going to take a little of this under my tongue. I'll tell you what. It's just, I love raspberry, so it's good for me at the very outset. It's oily, and that's because the base is coconut oil, which is lovely. And in case anybody was concerned, it's non-psychoactive, okay? Because it's CBD, cannabidiol. So there's not, if I fall asleep, by the way, before the end of the podcast, you'll know that it was entirely more effective than I had planned on. But that's not the purpose. The reason people will take CBD is because it's an alternative form of wellness, right? Including relieving symptoms of anxiety, depression, insomnia, inflammation, epilepsy, chronic pain, PTSD. I am not here to provide you any type whatsoever of medical or medicinal or homeopathic kind of guarantees. That's not my job. If you're the type of person, however, that already believes in CBD and uses CBD, whether it's to help you, sleep or feel less pain or whatever it is, what I can tell you is that you can go find this obviously, extractlabs.com are making high quality tinctures. The company is interesting. It's founded by a guy named, combat veteran named Craig Henderson, and he's got a team of a whole bunch of people out in Boulder, Colorado, and they're adding labs in other places. The product I like. So here's the thing. Because I don't know yet what its impact will be, this is really the first or second time that I'm trying it, all I'm going to tell you is that if you're a CBD person, check out this tincture from Extract Labs, and I'm just going to have a little hit more just because I like the taste. Hang on one second. I got no problem with that. That's just... Oh, and because it's a tincture, by the way, you could also not only take it kind of under your tongue here sublingually, but you can also rub it. You can rub it on the thing. Okay, we've done all the preliminaries, and now we get a chance to say hello to our friend Doreen Dodgen-Magee. Doreen, are you there?
I'm here.
I am so glad to have you here and excited to talk to you. Tell everybody where you are right now.
So I'm in Portland, Oregon, on the West Coast, where it is lovely and sunny still.
I'm glad. Now, Doreen, what I think I would like to do, I feel like I gave a little bit about your background, but I also want to, I'm going to take it one more. I'm just going to say that you are are you a psychologist? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
but it's okay if I call you, but you have a doctorate. Is it okay if I call you doctor or doc?
Oh, you can, but Doreen is just great as well.
I so knew you were going to say that, but I love the whole doc thing. Okay. Anyway, a psychologist who specializes in building healthy, balanced lives in the digital era, cooking, and this is part of the reason that we're on is because Dr. Doreen says cooking is a great way to escape your devices. Now, I think I feel like I'm sorry for this, but I feel like I have to start with this. Okay, a week ago, Doreen, I was in Mexico, and it was astonishingly beautiful. And then one night for dinner, we're at a restaurant, and the thing about the restaurant is it's a lovely place, and it was lively, and the food was delicious, and it was overlooking the Pacific Ocean. No, the setting was perfect. Mm-hmm. Right next to us is a family, a young, attractive family. I would say that the parents were early 30s, and maybe one of the daughters seemed to be, I'm going to guess, as a father of daughters, one of the daughters looked to me to be about 8. One was 4. Here's what I saw, Doreen. That the 4-year-old was playing a video and had headphones on, and then the other 3 adults were on their phones. I can't begin to tell you what I felt, but I said to the person who was hosting the dinner sitting next to me, I said, would you look at that family? And she said, yeah, very attractive. And I said, sure, attractive. But here's the thing. I find it profoundly depressing. 4 people sitting at a dinner at a resort overlooking the Pacific Ocean, not one of them talking to the other because they were all busy in their own little phone thing. And it upset me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a common story that I hear, and I have to say I have immense empathy for families because the pressures are so great, and we've socialized kids to want all of the extra stimulation, and at the same time, I feel a lot of grief about the way in which we are robbing ourselves and our children of the opportunity to kind of pay attention to all of our senses, and really, our sense of taste is a primary one of those. And there are some restaurants now in the United States that have, at every table, have a tablet that is there for kids to play with. So more and more, we're kind of blurring the places where we would maybe have previously thought we wouldn't bring screens, and screens are an integral part, and it is really sad.
Yeah, and I think the thing that struck me also in kind of retrospect was that in 10 years, these parents are going to be complaining that their teenagers don't communicate with them. That's the irony. I mean, this notion. I find it just as I said. I don't have to reiterate. It's sad to me just because the modeling here. The only good news, if there is, and you're the technology expert, so we have plenty to cover here. But the good news is that I read an article literally within the last 24 hours about restaurants that are now kind of either prohibiting the use of cell phones or setting up like special kind of reasons why you wouldn't. Why you would turn it off, why you would have to. So we're at least beginning to see the kind of the separation. So that to allowing people to still talk to each other at the table.
Yeah, it's very common now for stand-up comedians to contract with a company called Yonder, and they literally require patrons as they come into their shows to put their phones or their devices into a small neoprene bag that locks. And you hold on to it, so you keep your phone in this little bag through the whole show, but you can't access it in any way. And I think frequently that many of our communal experiences together would be made better and more profoundly intimate and authentic if we did that, in restaurants or in plays. I was in New York a few weeks ago, and every show I went to had some kind of an incident with a cell phone going off in the audience. Yeah. And the same is true at restaurants and at our own dinner tables at home. And it would be beautiful if we were able to be present to the tastes right with us fully, rather than distracted by these shiny little devices we carry.
And even though, Doreen, even though I'm a taste guy, what I'm talking about long before the taste is just the rare opportunity that we have in life to communicate and interact with other humans happens at the table. Yes. You know what I'm saying? So I forget.
Oh, yes. And even what you were talking about at the top of the show, one of the things that is deeply sad to me is that so much of our time at the table is now being offloaded even to technological ways that we can isolate. So things like delivery services becoming more and more popular, or being able to order your meal before you arrive at the restaurant, pay for it before you arrive at the restaurant, and pick it up at a special counter without ever having to talk with, the experts there preparing your food and asking them what is incredible and what do I need to taste and try. Even the idea of people, it's so interesting to me. It's rare anymore for me to have a spontaneous experience with someone at a restaurant where people are literally looking at the menu for the first time, because most people have looked at it online, decided what they wanted, and just that little bit of just interacting with the people who are preparing and bringing you your food, separating ourselves from that even separates us from the intimacy of that kind of experience at the table that I think you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree, yes, I agree with everything that it is that you've said. It's I don't know. I go to a restaurant kind of in a. I don't know. I do it in like a kind of a I've done it so much that I look at it as kind of a professional thing, and part of the joy, to your point, that I get is in actually looking at the menu. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't look at it in advance, but exactly what you're referring to. The conversation that I have with the server is usually about, hey, look, what's the specialty over there? Like, what's the thing that when I leave, I will have to have had? And you're right. It's just an opportunity to enhance the experience.
Right. I grew up with a dad who, when we went to restaurants, he would literally say, I would like to have what the chef thinks I should have
Bingo.
Today. And that's the way he ordered. And so I love to order that way. But it feels to me like we've become so used to curating our experiences across the board in every way that we are less and less comfortable with spontaneity, which means we are less and less likely to encounter things that are different from what we've already tried or had. One of the things that I say frequently, I think I say this in the book, but I say it in my talks, is that sometimes going to a restaurant without reading any Yelp reviews is like a radical act of health, even if you get food poisoning, just because it's a spontaneous, fiery experience. And we have so few of those in our embodied lives anymore, because so much of our experience is curated and delivered to us via technology.
I love it, but it makes me laugh in this way. Okay, I happen not to be a Yelp guy. It's not that I don't read certain reviews, but I kind of have a system, there are certain ways to figure out what you should trust and what you should not trust. So I don't read a Yelp per se, but one of the things that that shows up. Here's the good news about technology, Doreen. You ready for this one? When they instituted the program here in New York, but in cities all around the country where there would be a grading system. When you walk into a restaurant, the first thing that you kind of can't help but see, because they legally have to place it kind of in the window, is the grade, mm-hmm. right? So if it's an A, you know that someone's been there and everything is copacetic. But if I see a B, here's what I can do, and what I do is I go right into my Department of Health ratings, and I look up the restaurant in question. And I'll be honest with you, even on a B, 99 times out of 100, I'm out of there. So what I'm saying is I'm able to see technology allows a look inside that heretofore had not been made available in that context.
Correct. Yeah.
What do you make of sushi being made by robotic machines?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, I guess. I am a big believer that technology is neither benign, wholly benign, or wholly horrible. that there are great things that it can provide for us, and that also we need to be aware of the places where it has an impact. And I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is just that personal connection, and every step we are removed from our food, our relationships, all those things, the easier it is for us to, devalue it in an important way. So somehow it feels exciting. It feels kind of sparkly and novel and fun. And I also think if we aren't careful about being moderate about what we let machines do, pretty quickly, because we are a country that has a hard time with moderation, we will have a preponderance of machines making sushi and not as many people making it. So I think I'm just always thinking about, okay, how can we take this new, exciting, shiny thing and become moderate up front with it so it doesn't get out of hand too quickly? I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense, and I'll tell you how I perceive it. If you were sitting with any sushi chef in the world worth his soy, he would, a machine is anathema. Like, what are you kidding me? You like that?
Right.
It's like an insult, because if you think about it, part of the sushi experience, especially when it comes to sitting there at the counter, is literally it's the handoff. Like, they literally, oftentimes they hand you the roll.
Right.
And they're making it right in front of you and putting it right on like a piece at a time. So there's an intimacy and a connection to the actual experience of sitting at the counter, which can never be replaced by a machine. On the other hand, right, if you're in business and you want to open a chain of grab and go, sushi because it's convenient, and you happen to be using, as this place was, good quality, sustainable ingredients, overseen by people who care that it's going to taste good and look good, then a machine banging out 1,000 rolls, an hour, is the hugest possible time and money saver in the world. So as a business imperative, it looks super smart. So it's exactly to your point that there's two ways that you can look at the technology coin, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I feel so strongly about us being aware of the ways in which we want to convenience ourselves into places of comfort that can also really limit us. So again, I would say, great. Yes, we live in a capitalistic culture, and that's going to be important some of the time, but also to make sure that we are then, if we're going to lean into places like that some of the other times, making sure that we learn how to be patient as something is being made for us, and learn how to go slowly, and learn how to, have experiences that are different from just the mass production experiences we're offered.
I'm with you. Now let's get into this. Since the time that you and I spoke about doing this tonight, you've become progressively more famous. And I say that in regard, I think if people want to know how serious you are about what's what, it's not only that you've been doing it for a couple of decades and that you speak about it and that you've written a book about it, but literally 2 days ago, who shows up in the Washington Post, ladies and gentlemen, in the opinion editorial section, but one and only Dr. Doreen Dodgen-Magee, with an article headline, "Tech Addiction is Real. We psychologists need to take it seriously." So, ladies and gentlemen, all you have to do is Google Doreen Dodgen-Magee, or go to the Washington Post. They may give you one article for free. Let it be "Tech Addiction is Real" by our guest tonight, Dr. Doreen. So, talk to people in general terms about what you've written here about the addiction of technology, and then we'll get after that into the delicious part.
Okay, well, thank you. What I am passionate about sharing with people is that the research is very clear that there are at least 3, and usually I talk about 4 different ways that technology is impacting us, especially if we are using it in the way that most Americans are right now. The research is clear that we are spending on average 10 hours a day with devices. And the way we get to that number, the way researchers get to that number, is if you're, let's say you're cooking and you're looking at a recipe on your tablet and you also are periodically texting on your phone, texting someone, and you're doing that for an hour, you put those hours side by side, and that creates 2 hours, because the load on the brain and the body and our system in general is profoundly cumulative. The technology is impacting us in terms of our brains and our bodies. It's impacting the way in which we create and maintain our relationships. It's affecting the way that we are in our own bodies, including all of our sensory stimulation, and like taste and touch and smell. And then it is finally kind of changing the way in which we develop a sense of self or have a relationship with ourselves. And while the World Health Organization has now classified gaming, video gaming, as an addiction, American diagnostic categories have not grown to include any such diagnosis, either with gaming or just general internet use. And in doing so, I feel like some of us involved in both the mental health profession and the physical health profession, I feel like we're in some ways complicit with some of the negative impacts we're beginning to see, because we just have not kept up with the research on how profound the impact is. I think it's really easy, again, to want to be convenienced and to want to be comfortable, and we've all become very comfortable, and our technology provides us with many conveniences. But my argument is that we're losing a lot of what it means to be authentic, embodied human beings who know how to be moderate in our digital use and know how to be kind of fiery and interesting in our embodied lives.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And let's do this then. Let's help people take a little bit of time off from their devices, and instead substitute it with the kind of stuff that we can all do at home, which is to say, get in the kitchen and do some stuff. Now, before we talk specifically about that, I need to understand your food connection. Did you grow up in the Portland area as well?
No, I grew up in the Central Valley of California.
Oh, okay. Also great eating out there. And what kind of were you? When did you develop an interest in food, would you say?
Oh, I have loved food for as long as I can remember.
Doreen, then you'll crack up, because when I go out to make presentations, one of the things that one of the first ways that I start as a former stand-up is I say, I've had a love affair with food since I was breastfed. So, Amen. So, all right. So fine. And then and what did you eat growing up?
I ate I had parents who exposed us to a lot of a variety in our food and a lot of tastiness in our food. And the other thing I think that makes me value the experience of food consumption together is just that we did a lot of very easy but very tasty kinds of experiences within a larger community. So there wasn't a lot of fearfulness about a recipe being perfect or about a gathering having the perfect food. The emphasis was really on encounter, and then having, tasty, nutritious food available to kind of feed that along was really stressed and emphasized in a beautiful way in my community.
They're healthy, and it's funny because Central Valley, California, is another place as you and I were talking about, that has like a superabundance of greatness, because it's coming both from the land and the sea. I was thinking, knowing that you're from Portland, that there's probably not another country in the world that has two cities by the exact same name that are such incredible food cities, and I'm talking about yours in Portland, Oregon, and also Portland, Maine. But Central Valley, I mean, and by the way, where I was in Mexico, I could not help but notice that I was in a state of Mexico, 31, one of the 31 states is called Nayarit, 110 miles of coastline, and there you have the combination of all the stuff that's coming in off the sea, the fish and seafood, and all this beautiful, fertile agricultural land where they're growing fruits and vegetables, and it's in those parts of the world where you get the greatest stuff. Because there's so much that's available to you. You're a home cook, am I right about that?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I mean, so let's do two things. You can either talk about some of the things that you make, but I think more relevant to your story here is let's help people put down the, what did it say? Put down put down your phone and cook was exactly kind of the nature of what it is that we were going to talk about. Let's help people with some of the ideas that they can do to kind of put down the phone and cook, why that's a good thing to do, and then what to do when you do it.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would like to stress for folks is that we want a kind of a side effect of a lot of engagement with technology is this sense that everything needs to be kind of perfect. A lot of times I'll think about what I call the pre-Pinterest era, that there was a time when we focused on what kinds of, you could open your refrigerator or your pantry and say, like, what in here might go together, and what kind of spices might smell and taste great with this particular, vegetable that I'm going to prepare. And anymore, we've become so reliant on looking things up and doing things as we are told. And there's such a plethora or an overwhelming amount of information online, recipes, pictures, that sometimes I find it really paralyzes people from just doing the work of experimenting and making mistakes in the kitchen and tasting as you go and working collaboratively. And so I think those are the kinds of things I would like for people to think about. Rather than searching for an hour for a recipe, maybe look at a couple of recipes, get a general idea, and then bring yourself into the kitchen with no devices and use your senses. Use your nose to make some decisions about what to include. Use your eyes, make things that are really colorful and enticing in terms of their natural appearance. Just becoming more intuitive and less dependent upon always needing to get information outside of ourselves.
It's funny, because we're speaking the same language. I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and it's a how to cook book, based on my experience of being the guy that was going to cook the meals at home. And one of the things that I guess I feel like almost a little bit ahead of my time, I had many recipes that I marked with an asterisk as being what I called intuitive cooking, which is that if you understood the concept behind how to braise, for example, or how to whatever, that you could kind of create your own version of what is exciting to you by using whatever a different palette of flavor profiles might be. So we're on the same thing. But there were some specific things, Doctor, that I just love that. Colin, you've earned it. There were a couple of things though in particular. You talk about mindfulness and the art of dough making. Explain that a little bit.
So another thing I think about with technology is that we're so used to having our devices in our hands that we've forgotten how to, have experiences without them. So early on when I was doing the research for the book, I asked a couple hundred college students, what is a way that would make it easier for you to put your phone away during a meal? And one of the things that they said was to eat with my hands. If I had to use both hands to eat, then I would probably put my phone down. And so I began thinking about what are some things that would bring people to a table and help them encounter each other, like we talked about before, or even encounter boredom, but not to then turn to their phones. And one of the things that I came to find very, very successful with college students on college campuses is if I would make a big, huge batch of some kind of Play-Doh. So, and you can find Play-Doh recipes online. They're everywhere. And I would sometimes make them with essential oils, and then so they had a really strong fragrance. Or I would put glitter or sand in them so that they had a texture. And after a while, I found a recipe for coffee ground dough. And that became something that these students began to really, really appreciate. And they started sending me even their own alteration of recipes. So like they'd add vanilla, so it smelled like coffee and vanilla. But something like this where you actually go through the process of making it, you're putting the ingredients in the pan and letting it boil and needing to stir it and stir it and stir it as it gets thicker and thicker, and then adding a smell, maybe adding a color, and then needing to knead it. It also makes you value it, and then you have a higher likelihood of coming back to it. So then when you feel stressed, or maybe when dinner is cooking and we have a little bit of time at the table where we're waiting for the last thing to be prepared, we can pull that dough out and we have something for our hands to do that let us kind of be present with each other in an interesting way. The thing that I find is doing things like that also just make us uncomfortable. They allow us the opportunity to practice uncomfortable moments. And when we can be uncomfortable in one area, we can maybe stretch ourselves in another area. One of the things I talk a lot about in terms of thinking about living a life that is moderate in our tech use is living a life that is fiery in our embodied spaces. And many people have really trained their palate to be, only welcome familiar tastes or only welcome familiar smells or even locations. So what might it be like to try, like you're saying, intuitive cooking with some ingredient that is just really far out there just for the sake of trying it and being willing to be uncomfortable and stretch a little bit. Another thing that I like to do with community is to say, let's stop over planning and let's stop over kind of communicating via text about things, and let's just have a gathering. And sometimes I will call them hot mess parties, and I will say, I'm going to provide a bunch of hot sauce and some rice and just a basic protein. I'm not even going to tell you what it is, and you all bring whatever you happen to get a creative flight of fancy to bring. And there have been times where we've had everything from, chopped nuts to, herbs to even some really wild out there kind of ingredients from an Asian market, maybe. But everybody brings their thing. And sometimes you end up with 5 bowls of grated cheese. But to find out that we can all kind of just show up and make something dynamic happen in the moment is a profound experience. Another great hot mess party is to say that you're going to provide peanut butter dough. And peanut butter dough is it's another, it's a Play-Doh kind of thing, but it's edible and it's peanut butter. And you just ask people to bring whatever kind of toppings they would like for peanut butter dough. And everybody gets kind of a big round ball of dough and a little rolling pin, and everybody rolls it out and, adds their ingredients. So things like this that can actually create kind of a spontaneity and an awkward moment that we live through with ourselves and other people, trying new things without so much planning and curating.
Yes, count me in for that. In fact, you mentioned a few things along the way that caught my attention. One is you spoke about boredom, which I think for which the connotation is always negative, but the way that you expressed it is actually in a positive light. I mean, we spend I think what I'm hearing you say is we have so much input from walking around with a supercomputer in our hands. Mm-hmm. That in a way, life has become kind of almost sanitized. I mean, it's not just that there's an overload, but everything is constructed to be seamless and perfect. And that actually takes away what is kind of like the essence of living life in the moment and experiencing different things. I mean, people on a slightly separate tangent, there's no surprise that everyone gravitates to comfort and safety. I get that. But as an avowed kind of variety junkie, I'm always trying to encourage, if not entirely new experiences, then at least entirely new taste experiences. So I think that what you're reporting on here, not only I agree with, but I think it's also I think it's inherently challenging just because people are averse to kind of moving out of the comfort zone in many aspects, mm-hmm. not the least of which is what they consume,
Absolutely. And I think about monastic bakers baking bread, or just bakers baking bread, the need to be able to tolerate boredom in order to create something that is not only nourishing, but that, has the right amount of air bubbles and, the right yeast to water ratio. And unless we can tolerate boredom some of the time, we are always going to have kind of this hyper fast, hyper infused, even, food that is quickly made is so often infused with artificial flavors.
Right.
And so the more we can tolerate boredom, the more we can actually develop a capability to handle it, the more open we're going to be to all the kind of beauty that is complex stimulation, like food.
Yeah. I'll give you one more. Are you ready? The interactive Nacho Bar, I'm going to let you comment on, and I will tell you as a preface to it that we like to throw the occasional dinner party. You have people over, they don't know what they're going to have. Well, they've gotten a little savvy because people want to bring something. So we get like text, which is we're not asking you what you're making, but like what color wine it would go well with, you know, which is fine. I'm saying,
that's great.
Yeah, it's like, you know, like what, and then the answer, I think I might have tipped it off when I said, is tequila a color? Because that's going to go with this. But that said, I made a giant, because I had a lot of people. I made what they call here in New York pernil, which is the roast, a giant kind of roast. It's the pork shoulder. It goes by so many names. The Boston butt, the pork butt, whatever. It's shoulder of the thing. It's giant, and it sits in the oven at a low temp for 6 or 7 or 8 hours with a variety of kind of spices. It's a Puerto Rican specialty, so it has oregano and lime and garlic and onion. Beautiful and fabulous. But here's the thing about it. The Puerto Ricans don't do this, but I did. We served it with different kinds of tortillas, some corn and some flour, and then surrounding the actual meat, which by this point, obviously, you could pull off the bone. It's soft and lovely. To put it into to construct your own kind of taco or burrito, whatever you want to call it, was everything from like, squeeze of lime to pickled jalapenos to cilantro to cheese to a green sauce with tomatillo. So there's something like inherently interactive and interesting about that, to say nothing of the fact that people can kind of customize their own flavor profile. What about your interactive nacho bar? What's that all about?
Well, that it grew out of a very much what you just said, and that is that I am actually a vegetarian, that I raised, 2 children who ate through most of their childhood. My daughter is now a vegetarian. My husband is a meat eater. And so when we would have gatherings, I really wanted there to be 2 things. Number one, flavors and a dish that would just blow people's minds individually, that they could really tailor to their taste. And then also, I really wanted people, when they gathered together, to be able to come together and do an activity, do something that kind of gave them something to do when they were meeting each other, so that maybe they, would have something to talk about. So I would literally invite people to come as part of the preparation. And then I would have, everything set up for some people to chop the tomatoes and other people to chop the chilies and some people to put the actual salsa together. And then I had 2 cast iron kind of, they're just beautiful kind of trays that you put on the oven or the stovetop, that were my Nana's. And the other thing that was very important to me always was, or has always been important to me, is to respect children and to let children be a part of the preparation of a gathering or of an event. And so I would teach the kids how to heat up those pans to the right temperature, that if they wanted to heat the tortillas, or sometimes we would home make the tortillas, or if they wanted to be the ones that would kind of grill the quesadillas for the grown-ups, they could have an important role in the process. And it just became this beautiful way of people gathering. And then once they had gathered and created the offering, then constructing their own, their own edible masterpiece, so to speak, and then coming together. And as we were sitting, what I would find after the second or third time is the whole flying fork principle, where people who had tried certain combinations were, offering them to others at the table, and the children were getting to do the same. And it just has become a beautiful kind of tradition for our family to do it several times a year.
This is good, and it's a perfect way to kind of put it all together in the very short time that we have remaining, because I mentioned I'm giving this class on Monday. You'll be thrilled to know, you'll be interested perhaps to know that the class is actually called Improv Cooking, right? So we don't really use recipes. We're there to experiment. And because it's Meatless Monday, it's all, basically, vegetarian. So give me...
I wish I could be there.
Me too. and there's actually one spot left. But give me one kind of go-to vegetarian restaurant which is based on my formula: most taste, fewest ingredients, least effort. What's the one vegetarian thing that you wanna make that has that impact?
An ingredient or a restaurant?
No. You're making something at home, something vegetarian. Most taste, fewest ingredients, least effort. Anything?
Yep, veggie hash with a lot of hot sauce and 2 poached eggs.
I like it a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, Doreen Dodgen-Magee, doctor, I call her, has written a book called Deviced, Balancing Life and Technology in the Digital World. Tell people where to find you, Doreen.
You can find me at DoreenDM.com, and the book is at local independent booksellers and at Amazon.
Love it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for the hour. I love talking to you, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a big honor.
My pleasure. So glad to have you on. And also, people, don't forget to go look in the Washington Post just 2 days ago. This is the woman who wrote the editorial on technology as an addiction. I could not agree more. Thanks again, Doreen.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Now, in the very short time, let us recap. If you're in the area, as you just heard me say, there's a class on next Monday night. Improv cooking with me. We cook for 2 hours. Everything from kind of risotto and biscuits and soup and all that kind of stuff, and then it's all without meat. That's going to be fun. And I would also say that you are not to forget that you want to tune in next week when my guest will be Top Chef judge and cookbook author and all-around fabulous woman, Gail Simmons. Very excited for that for next week. I'm thinking that there's another announcement, and I totally forget what it is. Right, we got Gail, we got a class. Oh, we have a book. Come on, people, ladies and gentlemen. Short Order Dad, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free. You can get it also anywhere online that you can buy books. That's the good news about technology, isn't it? Right? Amazon, Rob. And also, for those of you who are interested, these podcasts, all you have to do is go to iHeartRadio, plug in All You Can Eat, and there's going to be 49 of them now archived as of today. Back next week for episode number 50. And until then, remember this, that life is short, so never waste a meal.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on